Beneath the scorching desert floor, ancient stone vaults maintain a perfect climate without any power source. This is not a myth, but a stunning archaeological reality. Deep under the temples of forgotten civilizations lie chambers carved from solid rock, spaces that stay cool and dry through the hottest summers and the coldest winters. Their secret is a masterful understanding of the Earth itself, a form of passive engineering so advanced it rivals modern technology. By the end of this journey, you will understand the hidden principles that make these ancient climate control systems work. We will uncover why these structures were built and what their enduring function reveals about a lost scientific wisdom. How much of our ancestors' genius still lies buried, waiting to be rediscovered. These chambers are architectural puzzles crafted from the Earth itself, constructed from massive, interlocking stones. Each vault is a testament to precision engineering. The builders selected specific types of rock, often granite or limestone, for their density and thermal properties. They cut each block with astonishing accuracy, fitting them together so tightly that not even a sliver of light could pass through the seams. This exacting construction was the first crucial step in creating a sealed environment, a giant stone thermos buried deep within the ground. The absence of mortar is not a sign of primitive technique but a deliberate choice. A rigid mortar would eventually crack under the immense weight and subtle shifts of the Earth, breaking the perfect seal. The interlocking stone design, however, allows for microscopic movement while maintaining the chamber's integrity over centuries. This creates a continuous barrier, a shell that isolates the interior space from the chaotic temperature swings of the outside world. Inside this shell, the air becomes still, and the vast thermal mass of the stone walls begins to work its magic. How could simply piling rocks together create such a stable climate? The answer lies not in the stones alone, but in the silent, patient energy they store from the Earth. Think of the stone walls not as a barrier, but as a giant, silent battery for temperature. This is the principle of thermal mass in action. Dense materials like granite and limestone are exceptional at absorbing thermal energy, but they do so at an almost glacial pace. When the sun bakes the desert surface, sending temperatures soaring, the heat tries to push its way into the vault, but it cannot rush in. Instead, the massive stone walls slowly drink in that warmth, bit by bit, throughout the entire day. This incredibly slow absorption means the interior of the chamber barely feels the peak of the midday heat. Then, as night falls and the world outside grows cold, the process reverses. The walls, now holding a vast reserve of stored energy, begin to gently radiate that heat back into the interior space. This creates a natural, rhythmic delay, a phenomenon called thermal inertia. The violent swings between day and night are smoothed into a gentle, consistent wave inside. The sweltering afternoon only reaches the inner chamber as a mild warmth during the cool night, and the chill of midnight is counteracted by the day's stored heat well into the morning. It is a perfect, self-regulating cycle powered by the patience of stone. This brilliant system, however, could not function without the second critical element, the specific substance from which these batteries were carved. This choice of stone was a deliberate act of engineering. The builders did not simply use whatever rock was nearby. They sought out specific types like granite and limestone for their incredible density. Think of a sponge and a brick sitting in the sun. The sponge heats up almost instantly, while the brick takes much longer to warm through. That is the difference between low-density and high-density stone. By choosing the heaviest, most compact rocks, the ancient engineers were selecting the most powerful thermal batteries they could find. These materials possess a high specific heat capacity, which simply means they can absorb a tremendous amount of thermal energy before their own temperature rises even a single degree. A vault made from a less dense sandstone would be far less effective, its temperature fluctuating with the outside air. But a chamber of granite soaks up the day's heat so slowly and completely that the interior remains in a state of near-perfect suspension. The very substance of the walls became the heart of the climate control system. Even the way the stone was quarried played a vital role. The builders extracted massive blocks with incredible care to avoid internal fractures. A single hidden crack could disrupt the smooth flow of energy through the stone, creating a weak spot where heat could leak in or out more quickly. The flawless, interlocking blocks ensured the entire structure acted as one continuous thermal mass, a single, giant battery working in perfect harmony. This was not guesswork, it was the application of deep, observed knowledge of the land itself, a geology lesson carved in stone. But a perfect stone shell by itself is only half of the solution. For the system to truly breathe, it needed one more ingenious element. But a stone shell, no matter how perfect, cannot function in a vacuum. The true genius of these ancient architects was their understanding that they were not just building a structure, but connecting it to a living planet. By carving their chambers deep underground, they plugged their creation directly into the Earth's own stable climate. Just a few meters beneath the surface, the wild temperature swings of the world above simply vanish. The ground here maintains a near-constant temperature, one that closely matches the annual average for that specific location. A vault built in a region with a yearly average of 60 degrees Fahrenheit would find itself nestled within Earth that perpetually hovers around that same comfortable mark. This subterranean realm provided a foundation of incredible stability. The massive stone structure then acted as a final buffer, a reinforced door sealing the interior from the last remnants of surface instability. The architects did not just randomly dig a hole, they considered the depth with immense precision. Dig too shallow, and the daily heat cycle from the surface would still influence the chamber. Dig too deep, and the project became impractical, and the natural geothermal heat from the planet's core might begin to warm the space beyond the desired range. They sought a perfect depth, a sweet spot in the Earth's crust. They also read the land itself. The composition of the soil and rock around the vault was critical. Dry, sandy soil transfers heat differently than dense, wet clay. The presence of a high water table could act as a massive heat sink, further stabilizing the temperature. Every variable was a piece of the puzzle. This was not simple cave dwelling. It was the deliberate, calculated harnessing of geothermal energy, a passive system that used the planet's own steady heartbeat to maintain a perfect environment. Yet, even with the Earth's stability and the stone's patience, the system needed one final, dynamic component to come alive. The air inside had to move. This silent, breathing architecture is what completes the entire system. While the stone walls stabilized the temperature, the air itself needed to circulate to prevent the space from becoming a stale, damp tomb. The solution was a masterpiece of invisible engineering, passive ventilation shafts carved with astonishing foresight. These were not just random holes. They were precisely calibrated ducts, often one set low on a wall and another set high up, sometimes even extending to the surface. Their design harnessed a simple, powerful force of nature known as the stack effect. Inside the vault, the air is gently warmed by the surrounding stone. Warm air, being lighter, naturally wants to rise. It finds its escape through the high vent, creating a subtle suction that pulls heavier, cooler air in from the low inlet. This creates a constant, gentle breeze, a whisper of circulation that happens entirely on its own. Think of a fireplace chimney always drawing smoke upward. The ancient engineers applied this same principle to refresh the air in their underground chambers. They were masters of fluid dynamics, understanding how air moves and behaves long before the science had a formal name. The size and angle of these shafts were not left to chance. A vent too large could create a draft, disrupting the delicate thermal balance maintained by the stone. A vent too small would allow humidity to build up, leading to mold and decay. The builders found the perfect middle ground, designing a system that exchanged just enough air to keep the environment fresh and dry without sacrificing the hard-won temperature stability. This synergy between the patient thermal mass of the stone and the dynamic flow of air is the true secret. The stone provides the steady baseline temperature, while the ventilation scrubs the air, removing moisture and ensuring a healthy atmosphere. It is a perfectly balanced, self-regulating environment that requires no fuel, no moving parts, and no human intervention. It simply works as it has for centuries, a testament to a forgotten genius for harmonizing architecture with the immutable laws of physics. The silent breath of the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni has been flowing for over 6,000 years. This labyrinth, carved deep into Malta's soft limestone, is one of the world's oldest and most profound examples of ancient climate control. It is not a single chamber but an entire underground temple complex, a city of the dead and a sanctuary for the living, all existing in a perpetual, perfectly preserved spring. The temperature within its deepest levels remains locked at a constant 20 degrees Celsius or 68 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. This stability did not happen by accident. It is the direct result of the principles we have been exploring, executed on a breathtaking scale. The entire complex is buried deep enough to tap into the Earth's stable thermal mass, and the limestone itself acts as a giant sponge, absorbing any minor thermal fluctuations with ease. But the hypogeum adds another, more mysterious layer to this story, one of sound and atmosphere. Deep within the complex lies a room known as the Oracle Chamber. This is no ordinary space. Its walls are carved into a shape that manipulates sound in extraordinary ways, able to amplify a whisper and carry it through the entire subterranean structure. This acoustic property is not separate from the thermal one. They are two sides of the same coin, both emerging from the precise depth, the specific shape, and the unique density of the surrounding limestone. The stone that provides such perfect temperature stability also provides the perfect resonance. For a culture that used this space for rituals and communication with the unseen, this was not a coincidence. The stable, cool air and the high humidity were essential for more than just comfort. They preserved delicate wall paintings from decay and protected the remains of the departed. More than that, they created a very specific and controlled atmosphere, a sensory experience that was likely central to the ceremonies performed there. The constant temperature and humidity ensured that every breath felt the same, every sound carried with the same clarity, day after day, century after century. This was a space engineered not just for the body but for the spirit, a perfect environment maintained by the patient, breathing stone. Far from the limestone chambers of Malta, the same principles were being mastered beneath the sands of ancient Egypt. Deep under the great temples of Dendera and Karnak, architects carved out crypts that defied the desert sun. While the surface temperatures could soar to unbearable heights, these subterranean spaces remained cool and dry, a sanctuary of perfect climate. The building material itself was the first key to this marvel. The Egyptians used massive blocks of sandstone, a stone chosen not just for its abundance, but for its incredible thermal mass. Each block acted like a sponge for heat, slowly absorbing the thermal energy that seeped down from the scorching world above. But the design of the access itself turned this passive storage into an active cooling system. The entrance to these chambers was never a simple doorway. Instead, priests and attendants would descend through long, narrow, and steeply sloped passageways. These corridors were ingeniously designed to function as cold air sinks. Cool air, being denser and heavier, naturally pooled at the lowest point. As it settled deep within the crypt, it created a reservoir of chilled air. Meanwhile, the heat generated by people or lamps inside the chamber would rise, seeking an escape. The builders provided one through carefully placed openings or shafts near the ceiling. This allowed the warm, buoyant air to flow out, which in turn pulled more of the dense, cool air down from the surface through the descending entrance passage. It was a continuous, self-powered cycle of refrigeration. Imagine the stark contrast for an Egyptian priest. He would leave the blinding heat of the midday, his skin baked by the sun, and walk down into the earth. With every step down that sloping corridor, the air would grow cooler and drier. By the time he reached the sacred crypt, he was in a different world, a space that felt almost like a different season. This environment was not just for comfort, it had vital practical uses. Perishable offerings like food, sacred oils, and delicate ceremonial items could be stored here, protected from the spoiling heat. The stable, cool atmosphere would also preserve temple records and precious materials from decay. It provided a focused, comfortable space for priests to prepare for intricate rituals, allowing them to don heavy linens and headdresses without being overwhelmed by the climate. This was not magic. It was the deliberate and brilliant application of thermodynamics, a science the Egyptians understood through observation and genius, creating a perfect climate with nothing but stone, earth, and the immutable laws of physics. Across the Mediterranean, the volcanic landscape of Cappadocia presented a different kind of canvas for this ancient wisdom. Here, entire cities were not built, but carved downward into the soft, peculiar rock. This material, known as tuff, is the compressed ash of ancient volcanoes, and it holds a secret within its very structure. Tuff is filled with millions of microscopic air pockets, making it a natural and powerful insulator. Think of it as the difference between a solid brick wall and a wall made of foam. The brick will eventually let heat pass through, but the foam, full of trapped air, resists that transfer with remarkable efficiency. The builders of Cappadocia did not need to invent insulation. They discovered it already formed by geological forces. They simply carved their homes, their churches, and their entire communities directly into this ready-made climate barrier. This was engineering on an almost unimaginable scale. A city like Derinkuyu descends 18 levels deep into the earth, a labyrinth capable of sheltering thousands. In such a massive, multi-level space, you would expect dramatic temperature differences between the upper and lower chambers. Yet, the entire complex maintained a remarkably stable and cool environment. The secret was the tuff itself. Its countless air pockets acted like a blanket, slowing the movement of heat to a crawl. The geothermal stability from the deep earth was preserved perfectly by this insulating shell, preventing the upper levels from being influenced by the surface heat and stopping the lower levels from becoming unnaturally cold. This was more than just a refuge from the summer sun. It was a fully climate-controlled habitat that allowed a society to thrive for months at a time, safe from the extreme temperatures of the Anatolian plateau above. The rock did more than just provide shelter. It provided a consistent, livable world. The very geology of the region became the chief architect, offering a perfect, sculptable medium for creating resilience on a massive scale. How many other ancient secrets are hidden not in grand structures, but in the very earth beneath our feet? waiting to be read not as ruins but as lessons in sustainable living. The precision of these structures forces a difficult question. How could ancient builders without thermometers or blueprints achieve such mastery over an invisible force like temperature? The answer lies somewhere between two compelling ideas: practical observation and a deeper, perhaps lost, wisdom. At its most fundamental level, this was a science born from watching the world. For generations, people would have sought shelter in natural caves, feeling firsthand their cool respite in summer and their gentle warmth in winter. They recognized that the earth itself provided a stable climate. The genius was not in discovering this fact, but in learning how to replicate it. They became architects of the underground, deliberately carving out artificial caves that mimicked and even improved upon nature's design. This was a craft honed over centuries, passed from master builders to their apprentices. Each project was a lesson, each mistake a chance to refine the technique. They learned through trial and error which stones held the cold best, how deep to dig to find the perfect thermal sweet spot, and exactly how to angle a ventilation shaft for a gentle, constant flow of air. This accumulated, hands-on knowledge was powerful enough on its own to create these marvels. Yet, for some, this practical explanation does not feel complete. There is a compelling mystery in the sacred context of these spaces. Many were not just storage rooms but temples and oracle chambers. This leads to another possibility, that the builders operated with a more formalized, holistic science, one where physical function and spiritual significance were inseparable. In this view, concepts like geomancy, the art of aligning structures with the energies of the earth, were not superstition but a sophisticated framework. The perfect proportions of a chamber, its specific orientation, and the sacred geometry of its layout were not arbitrary. They were all part of a single, unified system where environmental control was one expression of a greater harmony between the human, the divine, and the planet. The stable temperature was not just a practical benefit, it was a sign that the space was correctly attuned, a sacred atmosphere for ritual and communication. So, were these builders brilliant empirical scientists, or were they custodians of a lost esoteric knowledge? Perhaps the most fascinating answer is that they were both. Their legacy is a technology that does not separate the physical from the spiritual, but sees them as a single, magnificent truth, carved in stone and breathed by the earth itself. This seamless blend of the practical and the sacred reveals a world where survival and spirituality were deeply intertwined. These cool, silent chambers were perfect for preservation, acting as natural refrigerators in a world without power. Grain, wine, olive oil, and other vital supplies could be stored for months, safe from the spoiling heat that ravaged the world above. Delicate papyrus scrolls and sacred texts containing the wisdom and laws of a people were protected from the humidity that would cause them to rot. This was a matter of life and death, the literal safeguarding of a civilization's physical and intellectual sustenance. Yet, to see these spaces as mere storage cellars is to miss half of their story. The very same qualities that preserved food also cultivated a profound atmosphere for the spirit. The constant, cool temperature, the profound quiet broken only by the whisper of moving air, the absolute darkness pierced by a single lamp. This environment was engineered for transcendence. It was ideal for meditation, for initiation rites where an individual would be symbolically reborn, or for oracles seeking to commune with deities. The descent itself was a powerful ritual. Leaving the blazing sun and the noise of daily life behind, a priest would walk down into the earth, each step a movement away from the ordinary world and into the realm of the divine. This journey into the cool, dark belly of the temple was often seen as a symbolic descent into the underworld or the deep subconscious, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. The perfect climate was not just a comfort for the body, but a prerequisite for the soul's journey. The ancient mindset did not compartmentalize life into the useful and the holy. A chamber that kept grain from spoiling was the same chamber that facilitated a connection to the gods, because both functions served the ultimate purpose of sustaining the community in both body and spirit. The stone was not just a thermal battery, it was a sacred vessel. Our modern climate control is a constant battle against nature, fought with wires, compressors, and a relentless demand for power. We built heating, ventilation, and air conditioning to command our environment, to force a room to a specific temperature with the flip of a switch. This active system is a marvel of instant gratification, but it comes with inherent fragility. A single power outage on a sweltering day can render it useless, and its complex network of motors and refrigerants requires constant upkeep and expensive repairs. Its lifespan is measured in decades, a fleeting moment compared to the enduring silence of an ancient stone vault. The ancient approach was not about command, but about harmony. It is a passive system, a collaboration with the earth that demands no fuel, creates no waste, and operates on a timescale of centuries. Its machinery is the density of granite, the depth of a foundation, and the patient physics of air and stone. There is nothing to break, nothing to replace. Its resilience is absolute. This is the core of the contrast. Our technology gives us precise control but tethers us to a fragile web of energy and maintenance. Their technology offered a stable, consistent baseline, an unwavering environmental constant that protected what was most vital. One system is a sprint, the other a marathon. The ancient method presents a profound challenge to our definition of progress. We often equate advancement with complexity, with adding more moving parts and consuming more energy. Yet here are systems thousands of years old that achieve a core human need, shelter from the elements, with an elegance and longevity our own systems cannot match. They ask us whether true sophistication might sometimes lie in subtraction, in designing with nature's rhythms rather than against them. This is not a call to abandon modern comforts, but an invitation to learn from a different kind of genius. What if the next leap in sustainable architecture looks not forward, but downward, rediscovering the timeless principles buried beneath our feet? This mastery of the physical environment extended into the realm of sound, creating chambers that were not just climate-controlled but acoustically engineered. The same dense stone that so effectively stabilized temperature also possesses remarkable sonic properties. Sound waves travel differently through these massive, uniform structures than they do through the open air. In a perfectly sealed stone chamber, a voice does not simply fade away. It lingers, it resonates, and it can be shaped by the very architecture that contains it. Certain frequencies, often those within the range of a deep, rhythmic chant or the steady beat of a drum, find a perfect home within the dimensions of the room. When these specific tones are produced, the energy of the sound wave is not absorbed by the walls. Instead, it is reflected back and forth, building upon itself until the entire space seems to hum with a powerful, sustained vibration. This phenomenon is not a quirky side effect. It is the result of a chamber being tuned, like a musical instrument, to its resonant frequency. The size of the room, the height of the ceiling, and the parallel surfaces of the walls all work together to amplify and prolong these sacred sounds. Imagine the experience for someone inside such a space. A single, low chant would not just be heard with the ears. It would be felt as a physical sensation, a thrumming in the chest and bones, as the very air around you seemed to pulse with energy. This was a deliberate tool for altering consciousness. In a ritual context, this sustained resonance could induce states of deep meditation or trance, blurring the line between the individual and the collective, between the physical self and the spiritual realm. The cool, still air was essential for this. Air that is too warm or turbulent would distort and dissipate the sound waves, breaking the delicate resonance. The stable temperature and humidity provided by the stone vaults created the perfect, consistent medium for sound to travel with pristine clarity and power. The architects were not just building shelters, they were crafting immersive sensory instruments where the feeling of coolness on the skin, the profound silence, and the transformative power of sound were all parts of one unified, holistic design. The environment itself became a participant in the ritual, an active force that shaped human experience in ways we are only beginning to fully understand. The stone's patient breath was sometimes joined by the whisper of water. In certain sacred sites, the architects did not fight the presence of groundwater. They invited it in, turning a potential problem into a powerful ally. When a vault was carved down to the level of the water table, or when a shallow pool was intentionally built into its floor, they unlocked a natural form of air conditioning known as evaporative cooling. The principle is beautifully simple, yet its effect is profound. Think of the cool sensation you feel stepping out of a swimming pool on a warm, breezy day. That chill is not just the water on your skin. It is the process of evaporation actively drawing heat energy from your body to transform liquid water into vapor. This same exact process would have unfolded within the ancient chamber. The surface of the pool or the damp stone walls would constantly release tiny water molecules into the air. Each molecule, as it escaped, would steal a minuscule amount of thermal energy from the immediate environment. Multiplied across the entire surface of the water, this created a continuous, gentle cooling effect, dropping the temperature in the vault several degrees below that of the surrounding stone. This was not a haphazard addition. Managing water was an act of precision. Too much moisture, and the space would become a damp, mold-ridden cavern, destroying stored goods and making it uninhabitable. The builders had to achieve a perfect balance. They used their ventilation shafts not just for air, but for humidity control. The constant, subtle airflow would carry the moist, cooled air out of the chamber, preventing saturation while continuously pulling in drier air to fuel the evaporation cycle anew. This integration of hydrology represents a leap in thinking. It shows the builders were not just working with one element like stone or air. They were thinking in terms of an entire system where geology, thermodynamics, and hydrology were interconnected forces to be harmonized. The presence of a well was not just for water supply. It was a functional part of the climate machinery, a cooling element seamlessly woven into the sacred architecture. This reveals a mind that saw the world as a network of flowing energies, each one capable of enhancing the other to create a perfect, self-sustaining whole. This descent into the earth was far more than a practical solution. For ancient cultures worldwide, the underworld was a profound spiritual concept, a realm of ancestors, origins, and transformation. By carving their most sacred spaces deep into the bedrock, they were physically enacting a powerful metaphor. They were entering the womb of the Earth Mother herself. The journey down from the blazing, chaotic surface into the cool, silent, and stable chamber mirrored a symbolic return to the source of all life. This was not merely a building technique, it was a ritual in stone. The perfect, self-regulating climate they achieved inside was not seen as a technological feat alone. It was interpreted as a manifestation of cosmic order, a divine balance made tangible. In a world where the surface could be unpredictable, with scorching winds, floods, or bitter cold, This underground sanctuary represented a space of perfect harmony, protected from the chaos. The very stability of the air temperature and humidity was proof that this was a place set apart, a bubble of sacred reality where the rules of the ordinary world were suspended. Every aspect of the architecture served this dual purpose. The massive, interlocking stones were not just a thermal battery, they were the enduring bones of the earth, providing a permanent and holy boundary. The gentle, whispering ventilation was not just air exchange, it was the breath of the living planet. This alignment of physical function and spiritual belief created spaces of immense power. To stand in such a vault was to be in direct contact with the foundational forces of the universe, a place where prayer and ritual could resonate with the deep, patient heartbeat of the world. The architecture itself became a continuous, silent prayer, a permanent act of alignment between human endeavor and the perceived principles of the cosmos. The stone itself seems to look upward, its passages aligned with the dance of the heavens. This is the provocative theory of archaeoastronomy, suggesting that the air shafts and entranceways in these subterranean vaults were precisely oriented to capture celestial events. On the solstices or equinoxes, or when a significant star reached a certain point in the sky, a beam of sunlight could travel down a long, dark corridor. For a few precious minutes each year, this shaft of light would pierce the perpetual twilight of the interior, striking a specific altar, painting a carved symbol, or illuminating a hidden niche in the back of the chamber. This was not just a spectacular light show. It was a sophisticated timekeeping mechanism, a sacred calendar built directly into the architecture. The event would mark a turning point in the agricultural year, a time for planting or harvest, or a pivotal moment in the spiritual calendar, a day for a specific ritual or offering. This alignment fused two different kinds of time into a single experience. Inside the vault, you existed in deep time, the eternal, stable climate of the earth that changed not at all. But once a year, the sun itself reached into this timeless space, connecting it to the cyclical, mortal time of the world above. The structure became a bridge between the eternal and the ephemeral. This celestial alignment adds a breathtaking layer of intentionality to the engineering. It means the builders were not just considering the flow of air or the storage of heat. They were mapping the cosmos onto their creation, weaving the movements of the sun and stars into the very fabric of their sacred space. The perfect climate was the constant stage, and the celestial event was the annual performance, a moment of divine confirmation that the world was still in order. How many of these silent stone calendars still wait in the dark, their annual light show unseen, marking a year that no one comes to witness? Even the most brilliant ancient systems were not immune to the slow, relentless pressures of time. A perfect microclimate, once achieved, was a fragile equilibrium, and its survival depended entirely on the stability of the world around it. When we examine the structures that have failed, we gain a different kind of wisdom, one that underscores the precise conditions required for these marvels to endure. The most common culprit is a fundamental shift in the landscape itself, particularly the unseen movement of water. A vault designed with perfect ventilation to manage a specific humidity level can be utterly defeated by a rising water table. Over centuries, climate patterns shift, river courses change, or new wells are dug, causing groundwater to slowly creep upward. What was once a dry, breathable chamber becomes a flooded crypt, its stone walls saturated, its air thick with mold, and its delicate balance destroyed. Similarly, a single, powerful earthquake can fracture the very foundation of the system. A tremor need not reduce the vault to rubble to render it useless. A hairline crack in a critical load-bearing stone, invisible to the naked eye, can become a highway for heat and moisture, breaking the perfect seal that took generations to craft. The stone battery develops a short circuit, and the constant temperature is lost forever. Later human activity often delivers the final blow. A new quarry dug nearby can alter drainage patterns. A modern concrete foundation poured for a new building can block ancient ventilation shafts, suffocating the chamber's ability to breathe. These failures are not a mark against the original architects. They are proof of the system's specificity. These were not one-size-fits-all solutions, but bespoke designs tailored to a particular patch of Earth at a particular moment in its geological history. Their incredible longevity is a double testament to the foresight of the builders who chose the perfect site, and to the sheer luck that the ground beneath it remained undisturbed for 1,000 years. This paradox forces a humbling realization. The survival of a perfect vault is as much a story about a quiet, stable planet as it is about human genius. Opening a sealed vault is like breaking a 6,000-year-old promise. The moment modern air floods in, a delicate equilibrium shatters. For centuries, perhaps millennia, the environment inside has been perfectly balanced, a silent guardian for everything within. But that first crack of light can trigger a cascade of destruction. The humidity level, once locked in a steady state, plummets or soars, causing organic materials like wood, leather, or textiles to warp, crack, or crumble into dust within days. Salts that have been stable within the stone for ages can suddenly crystallize on the surface, flaking away ancient pigments from murals that had survived untouched for generations. This is the archaeologist's heartbreaking dilemma, the race to document and understand a space before the very act of discovery begins its irreversible decay. To solve this, science has given us eyes that do not need to touch. Tools like three-dimensional laser scanning allow researchers to map every crack and contour of a chamber from a single point in the room, creating a perfect digital twin without ever laying a hand on the ancient stone. Meanwhile, ground-penetrating radar can peer through solid earth from the surface, mapping out hidden passages and chambers below, revealing the full extent of a complex without ever breaking ground. These non-invasive techniques are a form of respectful listening, a way to learn the secrets of the vault while letting it keep its perfect, sealed silence. Yet even with a perfect map of the space, the biggest mystery often remains: what was it all for? The evidence is almost always fragmentary. An archaeologist might find a scatter of animal bones, suggesting ritual sacrifice. A pattern of soot on the ceiling points to the use of lamps. The specific orientation of a ventilation shaft might align with a star, hinting at an astronomical purpose. No single clue tells the whole story. Deciphering the original function requires a delicate blend of material science to understand the stones, anthropology to compare it with similar sites, and a healthy dose of informed speculation to connect the dots. We are left assembling a puzzle where most of the pieces are missing, trying to read the intentions of a people who left no written manual, only a perfectly engineered, climate-controlled stone room. The true purpose of these spaces may forever hover just beyond our grasp, a silent testament to a genius we can only partially comprehend. This ancient wisdom is now finding its voice in a modern movement called biomimicry, a philosophy where designers look to nature's time-tested patterns to solve human challenges. But perhaps we should also look to our own past. We might call it archaeomimicry, the art of learning from the profound innovation of ancient human hands. The principles perfected in those stone vaults, thermal mass, passive ventilation, and earth sheltering, are being rediscovered as powerful tools for our future. Contemporary architects are no longer treating the ground as a mere foundation to build upon, but as a living blanket to build within. They are designing structures with massively thick walls made of rammed earth or recycled concrete, materials that mimic the dense stone of the ancients, acting as giant thermal batteries that absorb heat by day and release it by night. They are engineering buildings that breathe on their own, using the natural stack effect to draw cool air from subterranean labyrinths and vent warm air through rooftop chimneys, eliminating the need for energy-hungry fans and compressors. This is not a rejection of modernity, but an evolution of it. It is the fusion of our computational power with their geological wisdom. The ancient vaults stand as a permanent rebuttal to the idea that resilience requires complex, high-tech solutions. They achieved a form of perfect climate control with nothing but an intimate understanding of their environment and a mastery of material. In an era of escalating climate change and energy uncertainty, this is not just a historical curiosity. It is a vital blueprint. It demonstrates that the most durable form of comfort is not forced upon a place, but drawn gently from it. These silent stone teachers remind us that some of the most advanced solutions for a sustainable future are not waiting to be invented. They are waiting to be remembered, etched into the very bedrock beneath our feet. Their silent endurance is a profound lesson in energy efficiency. While our modern world struggles with the immense cost and environmental impact of heating and cooling, these ancient vaults achieved perfect climate control for centuries without ever consuming a single watt of power. They burned no fuel, released no carbon emissions, and left behind no waste except the stone itself. This is a zero-input system, a closed loop of environmental harmony that stands in stark contrast to our energy-intensive methods. Consider the life cycle cost of a modern air conditioning unit. Its manufacture requires mined resources and industrial energy. Its operation demands a constant, expensive flow of electricity, often from fossil fuels. It will break down, need repairs, and eventually be replaced, becoming electronic waste in a landfill, all within a span of 20 years. Now, place that against the life cycle of a stone vault. Its initial energy investment was the human labor of carving and placing stone, an investment that has been paying dividends for thousands of years. Its operational cost is zero, amortized over a timescale so vast it is almost meaningless. This is not just an interesting historical footnote, it is a radical model for sustainability. The core principle is one of alignment, not opposition. These structures did not fight their local climate, they embraced its constants. They used the Earth's own stable temperature as a foundation and the thermal mass of local stone as a battery. They did not try to create a tropical paradise in a desert or a dry chill in a humid swamp. Instead, they amplified the best, most stable qualities of their specific location. This is the ultimate argument for localized, passive design. What if our buildings were designed as carefully for their particular patch of Earth? A home in a hot, arid region could be built with massive, shaded walls to absorb the sun's heat and release it at night, just like the ancient crypts. A structure in a temperate climate could be nestled into a hillside, using the ground as insulation to stay warm in winter and cool in summer. This is not about abandoning comfort, but about achieving it more intelligently with a fraction of the energy and environmental cost. The ancient builders were the ultimate long-term thinkers. They constructed for generations they would never meet, using principles that would outlast empires and languages. In an era defined by climate crisis and resource scarcity, their work is more relevant than ever. It asks us a simple, powerful question. Why are we building fragile, energy-guzzling structures when the blueprint for resilient, zero-energy comfort has been buried beneath our feet all along? Before science could explain the steady chill of a subterranean chamber, the human mind filled the void with gods and monsters. These spaces were so far removed from the normal experience of heat and cold that their very existence seemed to demand a supernatural explanation. In many cultures, a cave or vault that remained cool in the desert was not seen as a feat of engineering, but as the literal breath of a dragon sleeping deep within the earth. The steady, cool air flowing from a dark passage was the beast's exhalation, a sign of its slumbering power. To enter was to risk waking a primal force. In other traditions, these chambers were the sacred dwellings of deities, places where a god of the earth or the underworld made their home. The perfect, unchanging climate was a direct manifestation of their divine presence, a pocket of celestial order amidst the chaos of the mortal world. The air itself was considered sacred, imbued with a power that could heal the sick, inspire prophets, or grant visions. Perhaps the most captivating legends describe these vaults as thin places, portals to other realms where the rules of time and space were fundamentally different. A person might descend into the cool darkness and emerge what felt like moments later, only to find that years had passed on the surface. These stories were not mere fairy tales. They were the logical conclusion for a people who experienced a technological marvel with no visible mechanism. There were no gears, no fires, no flowing water to account for the phenomenon. The only evidence was the feeling itself, the undeniable and constant comfort of the air. So the mind constructed a narrative that fit the evidence, one populated with the powerful, invisible actors that governed their world. These myths, while factually incorrect, reveal something crucial. They prove the sheer awe these spaces inspired. The builders had created something so effective, so seamlessly integrated with nature, that it appeared to be magic. It was a marvel that transcended mere utility and tapped directly into the human sense of wonder, framing a masterpiece of passive engineering as a divine mystery. The true genius of these climate-controlling vaults lies not only in their design but in their very creation. How could societies with Bronze Age technology possibly quarry, transport, and assemble multi-ton stone blocks with such hairline precision? The answer is a masterclass in organized human effort, a toolkit where intellect was the most critical instrument. Imagine the quarry, a landscape of raw potential. Workers would not simply hack at the stone. They used copper and stone chisels to painstakingly carve a series of closely spaced holes along a desired fracture line. Then they would drive dry wooden pegs into these holes and pour water over them. The wood would swell with immense, predictable force, cleanly splitting the block from the bedrock along a perfect plane. This was not brute force, it was applied physics. Moving these colossal stones required a symphony of simple machines. Massive earthen ramps, their slopes carefully calculated, were built to drag the blocks upward. Teams of laborers used ropes and rollers, likely greased with animal fat, to reduce friction. They employed massive wooden levers with strategically placed stones as fulcrums to make minute adjustments in positioning. Each block was a puzzle piece, and its journey from quarry to foundation was a logistical triumph, but the final, breathtaking achievement was the fit. The seams between blocks are so tight that even a razor blade cannot slip between them. This was not achieved by chance. The builders almost certainly used sophisticated measuring systems and stone or wooden templates. A master template would be created for each unique block shape, ensuring that every piece carved at the quarry would lock perfectly into its neighbor on site. This level of prefabrication implies a shared language of geometry and measurement, a standardized system understood by every artisan on the project. The real technology, therefore, was not in any single tool. It was the living, breathing repository of knowledge held by the builder guilds. This was the intellectual property of its age, a detailed understanding of geology, leverage, and geometry passed from master to apprentice. Every choice, from the type of hammerstone used to crush the granite to the specific angle of a ramp, was the result of generations of accumulated trial, error, and brilliant observation. Reverse engineering their methods reveals a truth more impressive than any myth. These perfect stone environments are the legacy of a society that understood how to marshal human cooperation on a monumental scale, turning thousands of individual hands into a single, world-altering force. Zooming into the very fabric of these stones reveals a hidden universe of climate control. At a microscopic level, the rock is not a solid, inert mass, but a dynamic landscape. Each type of stone possesses a unique internal architecture that dictates how it interacts with heat and moisture. Granite, for example, is a mosaic of interlocking crystals, primarily quartz and feldspar. This crystalline lattice is incredibly dense, leaving little room for air. This density is what makes granite such a powerful thermal battery, as the tightly packed crystals absorb and store immense amounts of energy very slowly. But other stones work in a completely different way. Limestone is far more porous. Under a microscope, it looks like a miniature sponge, riddled with a network of microscopic tunnels and chambers. This porosity gives limestone a remarkable ability to manage moisture. On a humid day, the stone passively absorbs water vapor from the air, pulling it into these tiny pores. Then, when the air becomes dry, the stone slowly releases that stored moisture back into the chamber. This is a passive humidity buffer in action, a natural system that smooths out swings in dampness to maintain a stable, comfortable atmosphere without any moving parts. Then there is basalt, a volcanic rock that often formed from rapidly cooling lava. Its structure is vesicular, meaning it is filled with tiny, sealed air pockets, like a natural version of foam insulation. These trapped bubbles of air are terrible conductors of heat, creating a powerful barrier against temperature transfer. The ancient builders may not have had microscopes, but their empirical knowledge was profound. They learned through generations of observation which stones felt coolest to the touch on a hot day, which ones seemed to breathe with the air, and which ones could be carved into walls that felt warm in winter and cool in summer. They were not just choosing rocks for their strength and durability. They were curating materials based on their hidden, dynamic properties, selecting each stone as a vital component in a living, breathing architectural ecosystem. This sudden transition from a chaotic world into one of absolute order would have recalibrated the human mind itself. The contrast was not merely physical but deeply psychological. Outside, the senses were bombarded: the scorching sun, the blinding glare, the swirling dust, the cacophony of life. Then you stepped across the threshold, descending into the earth. The assault ceased. The air was still and cool against your skin. The only sound was the whisper of your own breath and the distant, sighing ventilation. The light dwindled to a single, flickering flame, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to breathe with the stone. In this sensory vacuum, the frantic noise of the outside world simply fell away. Your mind, no longer forced to process a constant stream of external stimuli, had nowhere to go but inward. This was the architecture's ultimate purpose: to create a vessel for introspection. The perfect climate was not the end goal, but the essential precondition for a shift in consciousness. It allowed a person to shed the distractions of survival and the ego, to quiet the internal chatter. In this hallowed silence, focus became effortless. Reverence was not something you had to conjure, it was an atmosphere you breathed. The space was engineered to induce a state of profound mental clarity, where every thought felt amplified and every ritual gesture carried immense weight. This was the true function of the vault, to serve as a psychological gateway. The physical journey downward mirrored a descent into the self, a movement from the external to the internal, from the profane to the sacred. The architects were not just builders of stone, they were craftsmen of human experience, using temperature, sound, and light to sculpt a state of mind ready for transformation. The greatest masterpieces of ancient engineering may still be hidden from our view. Beneath the familiar ruins we walk upon, entire networks of climate-controlled chambers likely remain sealed, their secrets intact. Advanced technologies are now giving us glimpses into this buried world without ever lifting a shovel. Satellite imagery can detect subtle shifts in the Earth's density, revealing the ghostly outlines of man-made voids deep below the sand. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses into the soil, painting a picture of hidden passageways and rooms that defy conventional history. At sites like the Giza Plateau, these scans have revealed tantalizing anomalies, large empty spaces beneath the bedrock that do not match any known map. In the remote highlands of Peru, similar surveys hint at vast subterranean complexes lying dormant under ancient ceremonial centers. Each of these invisible structures is a potential time capsule, a perfectly preserved environment waiting to tell its story. The implications are staggering. What if the most sophisticated application of these principles, the ultimate expression of ancient passive climate control, has not yet been found? Every new excavation has the power to completely rewrite our timeline of human innovation. We might discover that these techniques were far more widespread and advanced than we ever suspected, used not just for sacred crypts but for entire underground cities or agricultural storage facilities on an industrial scale. The quiet hum of a radar unit scanning the ground is the sound of a frontier being pushed. It is a search driven by the profound possibility that our ancestors' greatest technological achievements are not in museums, but are still buried, holding their perfect, patient silence in the deep, cool dark. These structures form a single, breathtaking tapestry. The threads of thermal mass, geothermal stability, and whispering ventilation are woven together with the gold of sacred purpose. In every stone, we see a civilization that refused to separate the practical from the profound. The chamber that preserved the grain for the body was the same chamber that nourished the soul. This was not a compromise, but a conscious unification. The cool, dry air was as essential for preventing rot as it was for focusing the mind during meditation. The silent, resonant acoustics were a byproduct of the stone's density, but they were also a deliberate tool for transcendence. This holistic worldview is the common thread that binds Malta's Hypogeum to Egypt's desert crypts and Turkey's underground cities. It reveals a universal language of design, spoken in different dialects of stone, but always communicating the same core truth. True innovation is not about dominating nature, but about listening to it so intently that you can build in perfect harmony with its rhythms. The enduring function of these vaults is their final, silent argument. They stand as a testament to a form of intelligence that measured success not in decades, but in millennia. Their perfect climate is a permanent question posed to our own time, asking us what kind of legacy we are building and whether our own creations will have the patience and wisdom to outlast us. These ancient stone vaults stand as a permanent challenge to our modern world. We define progress by the power we consume and the complexity we create, yet these silent chambers achieved a perfect environmental balance without any of it. Their enduring function is a quiet rebuke to our own fragile, energy-intensive systems. They reached a state of sustainable harmony with the planet, a goal we are still desperately chasing with all our supercomputers and smart grids. This suggests a different kind of wisdom, one that is not solely focused on inventing the new, but on remembering the profound. True innovation might sometimes be an act of archaeology, a digging down to recover the brilliant solutions already embedded in our shared human past. The next time you step from a sweltering day into an air-conditioned room, pause for a moment. Remember the master builders who, millennia ago, learned to carve that same comfort directly from the living rock, gifting a stable climate to generations they would never know. If this journey into the mind of ancient ingenuity resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more explorations into the deepest mysteries our history has to